Welcome in, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the SMITE podcast. I'm Isaiah. I'm going to be y'all's host, and for those of you who haven't caught our first episode, this is a podcast where we talk to different members of the TitanForge staff, the TitanForge team, just about what they do, how they contribute to SMITE, and how they make the game super awesome. And I'm so excited for this episode because we have some really special guests joining me today. A couple people who haven't been on any kind of show in a long time. I've got Ajax, the amazing Ajax from the design team, and I've got Killgoon, who's on the TitanForge team.
Yeah.
So I guess before we kick things off, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good week. I think we're both, struggling to get sleep with little babies in our lives.
Both of you all are new fathers, which is awesome.
No,
Happy belated Father's Day.
Thank you.
Just passed to both of you.
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, everything's good. Very excited about new season. I won a 4v5 arena game last night where one of my teammates failed to load in. So life's good.
You take it. You take the W no matter what. That's awesome.
And I spent the whole night crunching balance numbers instead of playing the game, as I often do. So here we are.
Hey, we had a new season just drop. I know you've got lots of data coming in. We have lots of feedback coming in, and bonuses coming next week, so we got to get ready for that.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into it when we get there.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to kick things off, and for those of you who don't know, for the people watching on Twitch right now, for the people who are listening, I want to give you all just a chance to kind of introduce yourselves and kind of your roles on the TitanForge team and what you do. So we'll start with Ajax.
Yeah. So I'm AJ, or Ajax, the design director. I'm lead of all of the teams that do all of the gameplay related stuff. So game balance, new god design, event design, levels. I dabble a lot with the monetization team, the skins and stuff like that as well. So a little bit of everything. I also very involved with the community team, especially with the Olympians program, the pro feedback program. I'm in those Discords chatting with those people up all the time.
More than me sometimes, which is crazy. I don't know how you do it with a kid.
I love talking to them. Honestly, I can't stop myself. I want to talk to them, and they give really good feedback. So big shout outs to our Olympians and our Olympian alumni for being super helpful over all the years. I love this group we've got this year. I'm always in there with them, but really what it boils down to, especially not just me, but me and Alex working together, we're at the, the high level planning, long-term planning for SMITE. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do next? What type of stuff do we want to put in the game? Spending a lot of time looking at our internal data, our player feedback and industry trends, trying to come up with the coolest stuff that we can.
Yeah. All right. I'll pass to you, Alex.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a big reveal moment for me, too.
Drum roll.
Drum roll, please. Yeah, so my name is Alex Cantatori. I am Killgoon, some of you may know me as. And as of very recently, I am the new executive producer of SMITE. So I am now leading the project. Very excited to be
my
in this
boss.
role.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Which people just assume all the time that I'm in charge of.
Right.
All
You're
sorts
Mr.
of
Hi-Rez, right?
Not in charge of. All the time.
Amazingly, somehow I am AJ's
He's
boss.
actually in charge of that.
And yeah, no, it's great. For those of you who don't know me or have never seen me around before, I've been at Hi-Rez for I think 9 years now, 8 or 9 years. It's been a long time.
Longer than me.
I started as a fan of SMITE. I was a player of SMITE.
As we all did. As we all did.
Yeah.
And I had a little website in like season 0 of SMITE esports, where I was while I was working a different job, just for fun, was keeping track of SMITE esports and who was winning and losing and writing up game reports and whatnot.
What was it called?
SMITE-tastic.
SMITE-tastic.
Yeah,
you got to do the
Shout
plug.
out to the OGs. I know, right? You got to plug it.
The website is long dead. I forgot to pay the bill one year and it just disappeared.
I just let it go.
But yeah, so yeah, I came into Hi-Rez as a SMITE lover. I've spent a lot of years on the brand and publishing side of the business. So I have led brand and led publishing across the company for a while, and I've really spent the last 5 years probably as a member of SMITE's leadership team from that perspective, being very intimately involved with all of the planning, all of the decisions around what we're doing and when, and understanding what players are looking for and how we can be sure that we're delivering things that players really want in the game. And yeah, about 2, maybe 3 months ago now, I was asked to step into the role of executive producer. So now I'm overseeing all the actual game dev in addition to the brand stuff. So it's exciting. It's a great new challenge, and really just excited to be working with the team and making a game that I love so much.
I know, right? Well, I know for sure I'm happy to have you both in the positions that you're in because you absolutely kill it, but happy to have you all on the podcast. And then, AJ, you touched on a little bit about a lot of what you and Alex do is mainly focused on like high-level planning and figuring out how we make things the most hype. And my question for both of you is like, how? Like, what does a day in the life of both of you look like? How do you all make that happen?
It's a complex process, right? And there's a lot of things I think we could talk about today that a lot of people probably don't know about and how game dev works. Like Alex said, he came from the publishing and brand team, also referred to as like marketing in a more casual sense. People have probably heard that, but different game studios work with those teams differently. So I'm not going to say what we do here is like the industry standard. I think there's probably a lot of studios that do similar things, but a lot of people that do differently. But at Hi-Rez, we were always, development and brand were always really closely tied together because community feedback and community presentation is so important to us. And the brand team has really good insight. Like Alex has always been one of the best, my go-tos at the studio for just industry trends and data about what other games are doing,
right.
what other games, what's working well, what's not, what's coming out. He is like an encyclopedia on what's coming up next, what games are coming out. You know, I lose track of that stuff. Right now.
I love games so much. Like, yeah, sorry, go for it.
No, I was just that. So we work. That's how we kind of started working like that together, and that process has still carried through today. You know, so we're looking a lot at what our competitors are doing, be games that have been around for years, like, you know, League and Dota, or games that are brand new coming out. What are the new games coming out? What are they doing? Always interested, excited about them, checking them out because we're gamers, like Alex said. But
that's
also
one of my favorite things to do is like, oh, what's the new game dropping? And it's not even about playing it for me. It's just like, oh, well, how are they announcing it? How are they engaging with their players? What are they doing with their community? What can I steal that worked really well from them and kind of apply for Smite?
Right. So learning and analyzing and processing that information, then turning it back into your own. And then the other part of it is a lot of just, when we say planning, it's a lot of, I guess you could say, you know, budgeting, but not just in specifically monetary budgets, but time and resources and people, and what we want to do might not be what our team is best equipped to do. And can we make changes to the team to make that happen? Or do we make changes to the plan? And there's so many different variables that go onto that. So like, this is something that Alex and I are just a part of, but we have a large team, production, the other department leads, you know, art director, tech director, stuff like that. It takes all of us working together and iterating through a lot of things to not only figure out what we think would be most exciting to do on Smite, but how are we going to do it? How long is it going to take? How are we going to break it down? And then it comes to a lot of the individual department leads, you know, like Clumsy and our art department, animation effects leads, to really make those even more specific decisions about each feature, about how they want to execute on it.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things is not just planning what the best thing is, but what is the thing we can do best.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because we want to deliver on great content for the people that play the game and always give people a reason to log in and be excited, right? Just recently, we were planning a tier 5, and we had this awesome tier 5 concept. This is for the future.
I know what you're talking about.
We had this awesome tier 5 concept that we were all really excited about, and we were really like stoked about it. And then once we started diving into the planning a little bit more with some of the individual departments, we realized we weren't going to be able to execute it at the level that we wanted to execute it, just due to a number of concerns about other things that were on the calendar and that we wanted to do. So we made a decision to go back to the drawing board and do an entirely different concept for the tier 5, which is pretty awesome. It was kind of a 1A, 1B, which was
all the tier 5s we've had lately are awesome, and we even were so internally split about them and couldn't decide because they all felt so awesome that we actually brought in some Olympians and pros to also analyze it, and they were also really split.
It was very different.
And so the decision ended up being made by what the team could best deliver on. Like, that's where Alex was going to. So.
Yeah. So I think like day in the life for both of us is, fortunately or unfortunately, it's a lot of meetings, right? Because a lot of our job is understanding what's going on in different departments across TitanForge, and helping them solve their problems and plan around different objectives from different groups. And also a lot of my day, just as executive producer, is dealing with people issues, right? Like, what are individual people working on? Where can they be the most effective? Oh, this person wants to join this other team, stuff like that. But I guess one other thing I was just kind of say is like, when we're putting together a schedule, one thing that makes it really challenging is SMITE is a game that has so many distinct groups of players.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm a big Redditor. I think support the boycott. I'm a sync user on my phone, so I'm very sad I'm not going to be able to use that in a couple days. But big Redditor, and I think that like the Reddit opinion of what SMITE wants is totally valid. Mm-hmm. It's 100% something we look at every day. And we really care about what Reddit has to say. But we know from our years of doing this that Reddit represents one very important part of our community. And there's a extremely large percentage of SMITE players that will never post on Reddit, that might play 4 nights a week on their Xbox playing Arena.
And that's it.
And they're
as the homies.
And they're as important to the SMITE community as
extremely important
the hardcore Redditors who only play ranked conquest or whatever, right? Yeah. So we really need to always try to think about what's best for everyone, right? And how do we balance the things that the hardcore players want along with the casual players to make something that we think is really great for everybody. I think you've seen we've committed a lot to hardcore players this year by focusing so much on Conquest.
Right.
And that was really a linchpin of this entire year was we really want to update Conquest more regularly because we believe that group is so important. But at the same time, how can we design things that are impacting not just Conquest, because so much of the player base never touches it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's really about doing something for everyone, and you can't do that in one thing. You don't make one thing that's for everyone, but you make lots of different things. So we have different gods that cater towards different types of archetypes that players like to play, with different art styles, different balance changes that target. This is targeting more competitive. This is targeting more casual, and finding the right pattern of frequency. And what we found, generally is that the more engaged, hardcore, veteran, pro level players, they want change constantly. Yeah. We pretty much figured out last year that
insatiable.
There was there was never too much. We were like trying as much as we could to keep implementing new things, and people were always like, more. So this year we made this whole plan around to really, really delivering on that, and it certainly has delivered a lot. And there's also concerns about people like, how do casuals keep up with this and stuff like that? Yeah. And the answer though is that they don't have to. Like, you don't have to. You can just play SMITE. You can play Conquest even, or Arena. You don't have to know all the changes all the time. If you know where to be, have a decent build, and hit your abilities, you will do better than most people who are overthing everything.
You're hitting your stuff. You're being successful.
I was playing SMITE with a buddy who was really into League of Legends the other day, and only played maybe a couple games of SMITE in his life. And he was like, yeah, sure. What's the mode that's like League? I was like, yeah, Conquest. I was like, okay, cool. We loaded up and played a game together. And dude had no idea what to build, had never seen half the gods before, and was just wrecking the lobby because he understood how to play a MOBA.
The fundamentals.
Right? And there are some fundamentals that are transferable,
So that's what we found each year. We have a lot of self-evaluation, a lot of self-assessment. That's other things that we lead in our department. So I'm analyzing every patch with my team. We're analyzing every patch with the greater leadership team, what performed well, what didn't, what's getting people excited, what's not, trying to make things better and better, iterate and iterate. So, I think this year 10 is really a culmination of all that 10 years of SMITE, of trying to find the right pace of competitive adjustments, the right pace of god releases, the right pace of skin releases, the right pace of going back and testing, doing things for the casual modes. We had the Joust updates at the end of last season. Yep. We're going to do something like that again for a casual mode at the end of the Season of Souls.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alerts. You're not going to come and have us two on the show and not some spoilers. What am I even supposed to talk about?
Right.
But we're going to do some cool stuff like that coming up. So, but that's at a different pace and at different magnitudes, different scales. We remaking the Conquest map at the beginning of the year, that's big. People get really excited about that. When we remade the Joust map in 7.1, that wasn't that big. That wasn't that exciting. People were excited about it, but as far as when you're looking at the actual holistic view of a brand new season of SMITE, people expected more for Conquest, more competitive, more high level stuff. So when the big ticket item was a Joust map, a lot of people who were really excited about the patch were just like, no, this is not my thing, So we've been iterating on that to really make sure we maximize that as much as we can this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, Alex, you kind of touched on my next question was challenges of the role. I
there's
said
a
all
lot.
the outline early, but I know you touched on making sure we make the best product for all the different groups and segments of the player base.
So many.
I know another thing that is super challenging is one thing that I always find fascinating whenever we inaugurate the Olympians Council and we have our first meeting, and the first thing we say is, oh yeah, we've got content planned out for pretty much the next 8-9 months. And I'm sure that's got to be a challenge. I'd love to talk to you all about what goes into making sure that we plan that far out and kind of how those decisions get made.
Yeah, I'm going to say it wrong because now I'm trying to think of the way to say it. But we usually say that SMITE is a large boat that is slow to turn, because there are well over 100 people working on SMITE. And
it's the same analogy Ben Brody used in his GDC talk this year.
Well,
oh, nice.
Look at me. I'm inspired by the best. Just to be able to do something as seemingly simple as making a skin, takes months and hits 7-8 different departments, maybe 9 departments, of people that need to have their own impact on it, right? So yeah, I mean, we're planning skins right now for November, I think. Yeah. So everything is very far out, and it limits our ability to be super reactive in some things.
Yeah.
But we try to be reactive as possible.
Exactly.
Essentially, our planning strategy is we plan things out in advance because things are related to each other, and you often need to. You're like, I don't feel so comfortable with my decisions about February without knowing what's going to happen in March. So you kind of have to do that to get the whole picture. And then certain number of things have to get started on very early and are relatively difficult to correct. Other things, like game balance, for instance, we try to be as reactive as possible. Like my team works to the very last second of the very last day of making changes before we send things out to cert and all of our processes. Like we're constantly trying to tinker right up to the moment so that everything can feel as reactive as possible where possible. But yeah, the common analogy used is like when your game is small, when you've just started your game, you're just in the prototyping phase, you're the speedboat. You're moving fast and you change your direction constantly. SMITE, though, been around for a very, very long time. We're the cruise liner. We got tons of beautiful features, Ferris wheel, roller coaster, water slide, everything you want on there. But when that thing has to change direction, it's going to take time. It takes a lot of people, a lot of work. So, but each new year, we really take time. We have these planning phases where we take the time to reevaluate. So before the new year starts, doing the year 10, the season structure, figuring out what we want to do. And then make sure it's another popular design concept. Like it's strong ideas loosely held. Yeah. So we have a very solid plan, but if it needs to change, that's okay. But it's still really helpful to have that solid plan because that's going to help everybody around you make better decisions about the plan, to have it in front of them, have them know. And if everyone's making it up on the fly, then you're just going to have, more miscommunications. Like, a lot of, like Alex said, a lot of the thing we're doing day to day is meetings. And what we're doing in most of these places is learning about people's problems and their blockers and giving them feedback, but also re-emphasizing clarity and intent and direction about where we're going, what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the high-level goals are of it, so that those teams can make the decisions about how to, implement things and reach those goals.
Yeah. Cool. Now, AJ, when I was talking to both you and Alex about the podcast, you sent me a sentence that really resonated in me, and it was like, if our roles are kind of boiled down into one sentence, it is, what we do is try to decide on hype stuff and how to do it. So I would love to kind of talk about some of the hype stuff that we've done in the past and how that process went. And I think the most recent thing that we can talk about is we're halfway through year 10. Like, let's take a little bit of time to kind of reflect on, the seasonal structure. That was a big change going into SMITE, right?
So I can talk a little bit about like what led us to this and why we thought it was interesting to do. So last year, I think it's safe to say that our initial season launch patch was not super well received.
9.1.
Yeah, 9.1. And we kind of missed the mark on a couple of things, right? And one of the things that we realized was a lot of people will only give a game a chance if they haven't been playing in a while when there's a new season release, right? And when we try something and it doesn't work, which we like to be experimentative, we like to try new things. You know, you saw a lot of new things with Season Souls, some which work and some which don't, which I'm sure AJ will talk more about.
Yeah, we can
but you know, if we try something and it doesn't work, then for a lot of players, they won't look at the game again until the next season because they don't understand the pace at which the game changes. Because players nowadays are so conditioned by a lot of live service games like, you know, Apex, Fortnite, whatnot, that have multiple seasons a year, and the time when the games change are at the seasons, right? And one thing that's interesting that probably a lot of our players maybe don't know is that Smite has a lot more player crossover with games like that than it does with other MOBAs. And our player expectations are more aligned with people who play, you know, those kinds of games. So our thought was, by changing to a schedule that's more aligned with what players expect, we can both give players more chances to re-engage with the game and see something new, give ourselves more freedom to take some risks without feeling like if we screw it up, we're screwed for a year, right? I think also just kind of try to reinvigorate the game a little bit more frequently.
Right, it aligns with the pace of change that our players wanted, which was more.
Yes.
So we were like,
in Conquest,
okay, here's
right?
how we can do it. And it wasn't just a presentational change, it also included a lot of internal resource shifting
100%.
to make around the seasons being big. Right? So we're putting a lot more of our design and gameplay resources into those season launches than we did in a previous year, which was essentially the X.1 and the mid-season, which was smaller. We've effectively already done 3 updates, all that were all larger than any mid-season.
Right.
But maybe not, and some of them equal or as large as even a
season
like
launch.
9. You could probably compare Seasons of Souls to 9.1 and total gameplay, like new gameplay, and say it's more.
And we've had to grow a lot of teams to be able to support that, right? So our environment art team has gotten bigger, our level design team has gotten bigger. You know, we've done things to be able to support these map changes, and it took a lot of planning to be able to get us here to try doing this. And I think, you know, we've definitely seen pros and cons to the strategy so far. I think we have seen a really good bump in players with each one of these new seasons. People seem excited to come back and try what's new. I think we've seen another group of players that feel like, I don't know about these changes. I would rather just see more gods, you know. You know, there's definitely a lot of interesting takes out there, and we're reading them all and thinking now about like, well, what does next year look like? How do we take the learnings from this year and keep adjusting and keep adapting? Because
we're already planning 11-1.
We are. But the worst thing that we can do as a game is to become boring, right? One of the big things that AJ and I harp on when we go through planning every month is, what's the thing that players are going to be excited about this month? And what's the reason to log in? What's the thing that you're going to be stoked about? And we really try and make sure that every month has something like that. And sometimes
or multiple things like that.
Yeah, multiple things like that. Sometimes there's something that we have planned that doesn't ship that, you know, in a patch feels a little bit more lackluster than we would like. That's game development. It's hard.
It is hard.
But we really put a lot of work into thinking about what are players going to be excited about each month. What am I going to be excited about each month? Because I play Smite way too much. So
well, a lot of that does come from our internal, you know, we as players and lovers of the game have our own opinions about what we think would be exciting or not. It's a combination of, from design side, it's a combination of problem solving. So a lot of like the healer balance changes and the tank versus DPS balance changes, which we can get into if we want to. Those were a little bit more problem solving. But then we also want to do just fun, surprising stuff like the beacons and the Titans, which also are still rooted. You know, one of our core philosophies that I've worked through the design team is that pretty much everything needs to have a bit of a problem solution type of format. We need to have good answer of why are we adding this to the game, right? And if it's like, oh, I don't know, it just seems cool, like that's not a good answer, right? And I think I love how Hi-Rez does things with the way we write our patch notes, the way we do the patch show, because we reinforce that messaging extremely frequently. And players hold it to us, People are still quoting back to me that we're not allowed to give our Cirquet free crit because we took away Artemis's in season 5 or whatever, even though crit has been pretty much completely reworked since then. But, we'll get past that later. I think it makes a lot more sense in today's context. But reinforcing those messages to our players, that's really important. That's a big driver for our whole design process. That's a big driver for how we're going to make exciting things. And we try to do a combination, right? Season of Souls had a lot of addressing some key problems that we feel like the community was constantly bringing to us, and also had a whole lot of really exciting new high spectacle new features that also solved other problems, but potentially problems that the design team was more keen on than the players, or depending on your player archetype, you might have been feeling more of a pain point here than other players were.
Exactly, yeah. And one of my things, go with me on this ride really quick. So it's going to be a little bit of one of my favorite things about this new seasonal structure is how we've been able to just theme Smite a little bit better, not only through content, but through gameplay around a specific idea. So like when I think of 10.1, 10.2, Season of Monsters, we had Surtur and Martyr Chorus, and like the meta really reflected aggression and pressure and lots of fighting, and that really resonated with me. And then we move on to Season of Hope, and there's still a little bit of fighting, but Ishel's introduced. She's got some destruction elements to go along with that, but also brings healing, which we incorporated healing reworks. And now into the Season of Souls, we've got Charon in, we've got gameplay mechanics around death, of course, but when I think about Charon, and he's been guiding souls through the River of Styx for eons, right? His route is carefully planned and charted, and everything that he does is meaningful and purposeful. And I think with the new gameplay mechanics, specifically in Conquest, I feel like people really haven't started playing around some of these new objectives purposeful or meaningful yet. I know one of the things that was super exciting about Titans Unleashed is some of these new meaningful and purposeful splits that could be created with the map. So I'm really excited for us to continue to do that. And I know, AJ, you've been working with the design team on just the overall meta of Season of Souls. So I know we talked about just a short little update about, Season of Souls. We've been in it about a week now. Kind of how are things landing?
All right, I have 3 quick things I want to go through. Cool. First is, Isaiah, you nailed it. It's kind of the first part about alignment. It's often referred to as tone or theme. When I was going through school, that's what my professor referred to it as tone. Games tend to be successful when they align, when your gameplay and your art style and your narrative and your supporting features outside the game, your community, your marketing, all align and work together. And when there's as minimal mismatches, that's when things tend to feel the best, right? That's why, if you made a Dark Souls style game that had Slime Rancher style art, like that's kind of funny and cool because it's subverting expectations, but that's going to turn a lot of people away, because people who want to play a Dark Souls game look at that and go, I'm not interested in that. People who, oh, that's cute, I'm going to try to play it, and then they're dying repeatedly on the first boss, they're going to have a bad time, right? So alignment is key. The second note was solving a meta. Players tend to often consider things are solved much earlier than they actually are. So, but we are not in the business of telling players they are wrong. It's always up to us to approach the situation from, okay, what do people feel like is solved already? How can we subtly encourage them to explore some new things? Can we just go ahead and balance out the parts that are solved instead of the whole thing? Is it responsible to just hold off and wait on making any changes until they see if it adapts on its own, right? So it's really about us working with that feedback, not to try to push back against it, but to plan our future designs, our future balance patches, our future features to work with it. So there's a lot of talk about the Seasons of Souls, just God meta, right? And we hinted about this a few times earlier on the podcast. So I spent a bit of time this morning and last night going through some things about 10.6 Season of Souls. So mages are terrible, right? Mages are out. Mages are done. The win rate in mages in Conquest was 50.696%. I'm not joking. These are actually the numbers. And in 10.6, it is 50.699. So only 0.003% difference. Wow. Barely changed. Overall, mages are still, doing well, but they feel different, right? So there are other important things to note. So I went through and I kind of clocked a bunch of other kind of key stats. So Conquest, the average game did get slightly longer, from 31.5 minutes to 32.5 minutes. That was not our intent. We were trying to actually add some more snowball to the game, add some more ways. So that's something we're going to continue looking at. I don't think people feel like the games are excessively long, but they did get a little longer. We walked back some snowball features. We nerfed them. The Cyclops chest, we nerfed the shutdown, and then we added some new objectives that you can fight over that would give you a lead. Conquest early surrender is at its lowest percentage in Smite history.
Wow. Which is probably the single most important metric for us.
Correct.
Because we feel like when people are surrendering early, it's a sign that they see themselves in an unwinnable game and they're not having fun anymore. Right. And generally people don't surrender from games where they're having fun and they feel like they can still win.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's one of our most important metrics is like, if you are, the last time we had a really bad meta, it was
really high early
high,
really high. That was essentially pre 9.5, right? 9.5 was a really big change for that. So Conquest average kills went down a little bit from 61 per game, that's across all 10 gods, to 58.5. So a pretty small change. As far as people saying people don't die, people are too tanky, it's a very small change actually on kills overall. And we're in this unique spot where people are saying the game's not snowbally enough. We really haven't had that feedback much in the years of Smite, so we're still trying to look to ways to walk that back. So that's one thing we're going to keep working on in the future. As far as other god metas, so surprisingly, the overall win rate boosts, Guardians have gotten the biggest one, generally, the biggest boost from 10.6. Assassins also got about a similar amount. Warriors, a very small increase. Mages, a very small decrease. And then Hunters, the biggest decrease. So I think that doesn't quite align with community feedback. Doesn't mean players are wrong, right? What I'm doing is I'm looking. So when we see data like this and it doesn't quite align with what we're hearing, then I go start looking at the supporting charts. So the thing I went to next was deaths and average damage. Those are other ways that I can, my team can kind of assess how bursty is the meta, who is getting kills against who, how are things working out that way. So actually fun. This also doesn't align with player feedback. When we were looking to this data, Assassins, Hunters, and Mages, the squishies, are dying significantly less in 10.6 than they were in 10.5, whereas tanks are dying about the same number of times. So maybe it takes tanks longer to kill them in 10.6, but actually a lot of the power reduction from 10.5 to 10.6 had a really big impact on the squishy versus squishy burst, which was one of our main goals. I think people kind of lost sight of that because on top of that goal, we did a whole bunch of new fun tank items and new fun tank buffs and stuff like that, which really did add a lot more to the tanks. But that power reduction, going into it, my team knew and predicted and designed it in the fact that it would keep mages from one-shotting each other, right? And instead make them 2 or 2.5 shot each other, right? We weren't trying to make huge changes here, but enough to feel it and enough to make it feel a lot better than what people were saying, which is like, oh, I just step out of position for 1 second and I'm instant dead, right? So we saw that happen, but tanks actually are dying at about the same rate as they were before. And the 30% versus the 15% adjustment was all part of the planning. We did a lot of testing in dev versus live to see how long does it take to kill tanks, and it really wasn't that different. The difference now is on damage output, right? This is probably the one people, after going through this whole process and looking at player feedback, win rate, players wouldn't really buy that. Kills and deaths, players still wouldn't buy that. I'm still essentially telling them they're wrong with these numbers right now. Then we get to damage, right? So mages actually did lose the biggest amount of damage per game, followed by Hunters with a very small loss in damage per game. Assassins actually got a slight increase in damage per game. Warrior and Guardians, big increase in damage per game, right? That's one of the main things people are feeling.
Yeah.
So, after assessing through this whole, all this data and looking at a lot of the feedback, I saw going back to the day in the life section, probably one of the first things Alex does too is when I get to work, I usually check social media.
Yeah, check Reddit.
It's a good way to get your day going.
Is it really? Yeah.
So I go check Reddit, and there was one post today that was praising how good the meta is. There was another post hating on the meta, but the top comment in that thread was, no, this is actually really balanced. I know people are saying mages are struggling, but builds like this, do this, Soul Reaver, more percent pen, E-Staff, things like that, or, maybe E-Staff's more of a Guardian item, but these are solo Guardian item, depending. But these are these things that you can use against them, and it works. Yeah. And people are starting to really like it. But some people take longer to learn than others, right? So we're seeing that shift in real time where day one, people were like, oh, mages are dead, just completely dead, and tanks are insane. But as we've given it time to breathe, we're seeing that slowly reverse itself. And I think people are being really positive about the meta. But still, spoiler to bonus, we are going to be doing a little bit of mage anti-tank buffs, and we are going to be doing a little bit of guardian and warrior damage output nerfs. Right? So that's a
little bit of spoiler from Ajax. But
yeah, that's just a glimpse into the whole process of how we essentially analyze gameplay balance data, check it against the community feedback, work through our cascading sets of
processes. We talk about it all the time,
processes.
AJ. Perception versus reality and trying to find the middle ground, right?
Right.
I remember years ago you telling me about how you just kept buffing Arachne despite the fact that she's overpowered at every level, but people just refuse to accept that she's overpowered.
Right. If we want to get into that whole, early philosophy I spun up on the SMITE design team was that perception over reality. So the examples were Thoth launched at like a 30% win rate, like the worst god in the history of SMITE in any given time ever. So we're like, okay, we'll just buff it. And everybody hated us because the perception was just not that he was bad. The perception was, SMITE players tend to perceive gods at their best, not at their averagest. Which makes sense. Those are the parts that are more memorable. That's when you're getting crushed. You remember that but this is negativity bias. This is a whole This is normal psychology. It's not crazy. And then we had a lot. Oh, what are these gods? Hades or someone was the best god. I'll just nerf him. Everybody hated that too. So we're like, okay, hold up. It's not this simple, right? You can't just look at win rate in a vacuum. You got to compare perception versus reality. You got to look at pick ban rate in ranked is one of the best ways to analyze what the players think is the best, because that's essentially they're voting with their gameplay.
What they don't want to play.
They're picking what they don't want to play against or what they're going to try to play. That's what they think is the strongest in the game. So and you have to contrast that against win rate and damage and other stats to kind of make those decisions. So at multiple points in the game, we have buffed the strongest god in the game and received universally positive feedback. And we have also nerfed the worst god in the game and received universally positive feedback. So, there's a lot of interesting things you can do in how to bridge the gap between the perception and the reality, and how to be clever as designers to really, our goal is we want to deliver what people want from us, right? But it's hard to please everyone. So you have to find these compromises and targeting specific things in different ways to try to make sure you give something for everyone or hit as many maximum positives as possible. It might be impossible to be 100% positive on any balance patch, but the difference between 90 and 95% positive is still a big difference. The difference between 50% positive and 50 or 60, still a big difference. It's worth every extra percentage point we can get to make people that 1% more positive on a patch than the last patch. I'm happy,
And that segues to my next topic. Speaking of things how we try to deliver something for everybody, what people want. I want to talk a little bit about, planning the God lineup. Ooh. I know that's something that players are always interested in.
Yeah.
The Build a God panel is always super well received when we do it at SWC. Yeah. And I know how we think about the God roster for any given year of SMITE. It's more than just, okay, let's write names down a list. I know there have been jokes, so we're just going to throw out a dartboard for a little bit. But no, there's a lot of community feedback that goes into it. I know literally anyone on the TitanForge team can contribute to that discussion, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We're planning. Players see it released at one at a time, but we're planning the whole roster together, right? So the God number 1 of this year has its own strengths and weaknesses, and we're going to have a God later in the year that counteracts those weaknesses with its own strengths, right? And in a way to try to, and we're kind of designing, oftentimes when we're planning this whole thing as a package. How is this all going to work together? How is this all going to flow together?
Yeah, and it's, it's a mix of, obviously you got to hit different classes. You have to hit different pantheons.
Right.
You have to weigh what the most vocal player base wants to see.
Right.
You have to weigh what is an interesting surprise that they maybe aren't expecting, right?
Right.
Some of our most successful gods have actually been ones that the community was not asking for, like Danza
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Danza was amazing. I tell stories about Danza all the time. How one of the most successful gods in SMITE history, and no one ever heard of him or asked for him or wanted him, or by name ever. But once we delivered it, people were just like, "Yep, okay, I want that." Right? There was no one asked for this type of thing, even though no one did. But it was just executed so well that everyone's like, "Oh, okay, I'm in."
Still one of my favorite gods to this day.
Yeah.
So good.
Cthulhu also, and Arthur and Merlin also fall into those categories. All really successful gods.
I think that there's also so we're balancing, like I said, class, pantheon,
Body type, creature, male, female creature.
And I think that the other thing that's incredibly important is we have to have an idea to interpret this god in Smite in a way that's really new and exciting, right? There are some names that keep coming up on community most requested lists that we've talked about a lot internally, and every time we throw together a kit, just kind of brainstorming for them, or like, oh, what would this god do? It's like, well, that's kind of the same as this other god. Right. Like, oh, well, the thing this god's, I don't know. Like, what can we do to add something new to the game? And I think that's really important with every god, especially when we're at what?
And it's only getting harder.
124.
It gets
124.
It gets mathematically more difficult every single god we add, because a lot of decisions are being made around what haven't we done, and that pool is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah. So we usually do plan as much as we can an entire year at once. And the flow of things and how things go together.
The end of the year is usually left a little bit open and flexible because
there's almost always a god added or removed towards the end of a year as things.
Which is why we actually chose this year to not even preview like the very end of year 10. We just cut it off early, so people don't really know what's happening at the end of year 10. Because at the time, we didn't feel sure enough ourselves, right? Because we've had the last 2 years we did that, it had to change it.
Yes.
So this year we're like, we'll just leave it more of a mystery, and then we're figuring it out now, or been figuring it out now. Now we're a lot more prepared for it.
Yeah. So I guess I would say that there's a lot of things that we weigh, and it's again different groups of players, right? One of the other things that we have to consider is like historically in the summer we've tried to release a god that is more wide, broad appeal to. Be more of kind of like a win-back opportunity, be an exciting character as our box art on the consoles and on Steam, which may sound really unimportant, but it's one of the biggest things that drives people being interested in the game. Oh, that guy looks cool. I want to play that game, right? And the most successful example of this in the history of Smite, by a lot, was Cthulhu. When I know there was a lot of debate in the community about whether
active petitions against Cthulhu ever being in the game, and now he's measurably the most successful god we've ever made.
Yeah, without a doubt. It led to the most new player acquisition, the most discussion, still one of the most played guardians in the game. And I think that a lot of discussion in that god particularly was around like, how do we handle his release? We put out a statement on Reddit explaining the way that we approached it and our
I think
thoughts.
we even did some additional messaging in the Closer Look blog.
Oh, a lot of extra actually.
So sometimes when we take risks like that, it really pays off. Sometimes it is a little bit less payoff, but I think that going back to what I said earlier, right? Like we want there to be a reason to be excited to log into Smite every month. We want things to feel Smite. We don't want to add just some crazy person that doesn't belong in Smite at all. But in our internal discussions, we felt like Cthulhu fit for the reasons that we enumerated in our blog post. And it worked out really well for us. So.
Really interesting tangent on gods to me is how much range every god has. I'd say like there's a few rare exceptions, like maybe Shiva. But outside of that, even when we're usually spending a pretty large amount of time and effort to make sure we deliver on the expectations of that god. We still have a lot of things we could do that are all very different from each other that all could still do that. So like I used to think of certain gods as like boring because their lore is not very boring, their depictions not very interesting, they don't do anything super specific. There's a couple of the most community requested ones that I would still say are on that list. But at this point, over the years, I don't think we really consider them boring anymore. We consider them blank slates, which is actually great because that means we can do really cool, weird, fun stuff because their lore is very flexible, they don't have to do this thing. And if that's not in there, then people are mad. We can kind of make them do whatever we want. And that's actually really exciting now. And then every god, even when a god is more clearly defined, there's still a lot of range on what level to interpret them. And, you know, a lot of Smite's history, you know, me and Alex, or more so maybe starting with me, I'm doing a lot of the initial pitching on, okay, this god, we're going to stay very to the books. Here's why I think that, because it aligns with the gameplay, aligns with the expectations, whatever, versus this god, we're going to do something very different. So like Morgan Le Fay, I think is a good example. I personally was pushing really hard for, like, let's not just do another standard robed staff sorceress character. Every RPG has got a billion of them. Smite already has many mage women like that already. I was like, let's do something different, right? That still feels, so that's where I pushed for more of the armored, the regal, the sword, the spell sword,
chainmail,
but that was not an easy decision. There was a lot of people internally who did not want to do that, and we actually have some Morgan Le Fay concepts of her being much more the Morrigan looking, I suppose I'd say. But I was very concerned that it would just feel like another Morrigan or another Discordia, another Nuwa, another Aphrodite, you know, evil Afro, whatever. So we've tried to really push and find some unique places. So the range is crazy, and every new god, I think, has a lot of room to explore. So at this point, with this concept in mind, I don't consider any god as being off the table. We could always find something to do, something within that. Dan's Burrow actually came from the idea because I wanted a gun character.
Yeah.
I wanted to design a gun.
not just Kuzubo. We need an actual
gun hunter. But I didn't, obviously it's mythology, it's ancient, it doesn't make sense to have anything too modern. We don't want anything too serious, obviously nothing military. So we were like, you know, ancient fireworks, that makes a lot of sense from Chinese and Japanese mythology that came about, and then putting it on an even more comedic character fit really good for the Smite tone, where you don't really have, like, I don't think, you know, a serious gun guy would have been nearly as fun as what we came up with. So I don't know. That's just, I think, a really interesting way to think about all the different ways we can do any god, and what we're always trying to look for new things, trying to find room to explore, but always still trying to meet those expectations of what people are excited for the character they've already heard of or learned about elsewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot. We got a few minutes left, and I want to dig in. And I want to hear more about some of you y'all's just personal experience. And I love asking this question to everybody who comes on the show. But what's some of the favorite things that you've worked on? I know, Alex, you've worked on countless things on the Smite side. I know the fun fact is he was a big contributor in our first crossover with Bob Ross and AJ.
Yeah.
You've done countless things at Titan Forge in your time on Smite. I know it's hard to put you on the spot.
Stat sheet numbers you were just picking up. You were just doing about how many patches we've shipped. How many,
Oh yeah.
Alex is just running through like a Smite by the numbers, and it's crazy. But no, like, yeah, I've designed myself like 13 gods, and then led the team for some 52 more or something like that, and then every balance patch every season. It's a long list.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm the most proud of, I'm gonna give you two completely different answers.
Cool.
So one would be probably Ruby.
Oh yeah.
Ruby was the first real crossover that we did, and that was something that you know, was kind of for me. I was the one who came up with the idea and was really pushing for it. I was doing some research. I was working on the brand side at the time, and I found that there was a pretty big crossover in interest between Smite players and Ruby, and reached out to the folks at Rooster Teeth, made the deal happen, convinced the Titan Forge team that it was worth following my crazy idea here, because we had, other than Bob Ross, we had never really done anything like this before, and committing 4 skins and an entire battle pass to this is a big commitment for the team. And you know, it went really well, and I think most of the credit goes to the team for executing on the skins. Like I started the business conversations, and then they just knocked it out of the park.
No, it's a good example and illustrative of our roles, where like looking for those industry trends, looking for opportunities, and then Alex was also spending time with making pitches, working through the plans with the developers about how we can execute it, getting people gradually on board, right? That's a lot of what we do.
Yep. And then the other completely unrelated thing from, like I said, I started out more on the marketing side of the business. I did the Smite on PS4 launch. kind of soup to nuts. And that was just a really rewarding thing for me at that point in my career, because I loved Smite so much. I still love Smite so much. And to be largely responsible for launching it on an all new platform and all the challenges around that. Like, I was, uploading the translations to the PlayStation backend and booking the ads and basically doing the whole thing. We had a very small marketing team at the time.
Right.
So I was very pleased with how that turned out, especially given there was a lot of competition at the time. And it was just very personally fulfilling to run that campaign. It's
awesome.
So.
What about you, AJ?
So I have a couple things that come to mind that are different categories. So one that I'm especially proud of is the stars system, mastery stars.
Yeah.
One of
that's
the
a great
first
one.
designs I ever did when I first joined the studio. Very young Ajax. It was like one page. It was very simple, but I was just like, I saw this. I got on the team. No one necessarily told me what to do or how to do it. I was just like, whenever I get a god to diamond, I stop playing him and I play a new god. And I want to keep maining my guardians. I was a big main of. I want to keep playing Ares. I want to be incentivized to do that.
Right, yeah.
So I made this simple one-page design, very simple. We're just going to make this infinitely expanding system that just looks ridiculous as it gets. And the UI team implemented it. It was really like a small, simple thing. It's like still drives a lot of people's hunger to play
Get those
Smite.
stars.
And it was just a tiny little offhand design when I was a god designer, so I wasn't really doing a lot of other systems design, but I was just like, let's make this happen. I want to make this happen. I can't remember if that was when I was first hired or when I first became lead. I don't remember, but sometime. And so I'm still really proud of that one.
Did you know that on Xbox there's an entire club or community devoted to people showing off how many stars they have on their gods in Smite?
No, that is
It's great.
insane.
Yeah,
I have to check that out.
Check it out.
I've seen the infograph that shows people what it looks like. Like someone demoed it. Like, this is what it looks like when you have 3 and then 5 and then 100, 500, 5,000. It starts to become just a blur.
It's
so I'm always really proud of that. I mean, I think outside of that, things I'm really proud of is the team. So as a lead designer and a design director, what's more important, almost more important than the game, is how the team is doing.
Yeah.
And that's because a good team makes a good game, right? It's not that I'm saying, it's not like I have to pick between the two. They are connected in that way. So just to see the designers that I've worked with grow and become such skilled, strong designers, and same, people that we've worked with on other teams, that's really rewarding process and something to be really proud of. I think overall we've built a lot of really strong teams, really strong departments, people who are still here working for us who are fantastic, and people who have left who have gotten extremely exciting job offers and things like that to other studios to show that the work we're doing here is valuable. It is competitive. If Riot and Blizzard are poaching people from us, that's not a bad problem to have. It means that we're good. We're good at things, and our people are good at things, right? Obviously, we try to retain as many as we can, but there's many factors that play into that.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Just proud of how many amazing, strong developers we've generated over the years.
Yeah, cool.
Dan Zaburo pitch is another one that I do bring up a lot because I really did just spearhead that one out of nowhere. And
I wasn't sold on it. I thought that because there are a lot of things about Dan Zaburo that are generally lower performing traits to a character. But you were so passionate about it. You're like, no, guys, it's going to be great. And I was like,
great.
Part of my pitch was we can make a XYZ that doesn't perform. We can make it perform. I know we can.
I think
we just weren't doing it right on the previous versions.
I think the thing that really sold me on it was, Tina screeching about how we were going to handle certain aspects of his anatomy. So,
sometimes you just get a feel from the team too when you pitch something that
you can feel the energy, right?
Right, and there's certain gods that obviously people are interested and excited about. Like, oh yeah, I get we're doing Morgan Le Fay. Like, that's cool, I understand it. But that's not the same as Trolley, Tanuki, Gun Hunter, where people are just like, oh my god, I cannot wait. Like, there is tiers, so that one's up there too. The Conquest reworks, always big challenges, always tough.
just done too much. You got too many.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd say keeping those things at the top. Those are the top. If I just cut myself off. Oh, the Magic crossover.
Oh yeah.
We're all big Magic players.
Yeah, I've been a Magic
we
player.
can talk about Magic for the next hour.
I'm a really old school
Break out the
Magic
commander
player,
decks. Let's
still
play.
playing. Yeah, I played a commander with Isaiah last week. Alex is going to play with us tomorrow.
Yeah, I dug out my decks.
So-
I have not been playing much since I have been here in Georgia. But
Right. But we're going to get you back into
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
I've been playing forever, on and off, been really into it for the last 5 or so years. And I made the initial pitch deck to send to Wizards, and Bart brought it over. And Bart came back and told me that they said this was the best pitch deck they've ever seen like this. Like, And it was actually still pretty ugly. I didn't do a lot of the visual updates to it, but I think that they really appreciated the content and the attention to detail. So, and I think the execution on those skins turned out really well too.
Fantastic.
I think that one of the things that we're just generally good at as a group is that everybody that works at Titan Forge is super passionate about what they do, right? And you can see it in our crossovers, especially because when we first reach out to these big groups, right, that have hundreds of people asking them every day about, oh, hey, can I license your characters for T-shirts or whatnot? You know, we come to them with these really deep presentations that show the level of thought and attention that we put into this about like, this character would map onto this character because he did this one thing in this one episode. And we really understand who these characters are, and they really appreciate that passion.
And I've still seen news articles writing content about Avatar, completely unrelated to us. They use our splash art sometimes because they're just Googling and looking for what they think looks the best, and they're picking our art. And we had lots of our players and players of other games saying that the 3D animated representations of the Avatar characters in Smite are the best ones they've seen in any game, right?
Which is awesome. It's very
and like seeing those types of comments about our work and passionate is important to distinguish. Like a lot of times passion in game dev gets thrown around in a lot of different contexts, but I think for what it means for us is that people care about their work and they really pay attention and try to execute to their very best, not because they're feel like they need to or have to, but because they want to, because they care about it, because they're invested in it personally. That leads to a lot of our best stuff.
Yeah. Well, Alex, AJ, we're at the end of our show.
Are we
thanks so much.
We should have had more time to go off topic.
Right? Maybe next
all
time
the podcasts I listen to are at least 50% of just making fun of each other and like talking about other random stuff.
We'll have to have you both back on for no outline, no questions. We just hang out.
We're both big talkers, so you could have given us a single bullet point. We would have filled the whole time with it.
That's true. We both long talkers.
Yeah.
So
well, if the community, for our watchers and listeners, want to find you on social media and maybe ask you any follow-up questions, where can they find you?
Yeah, I am at Killgoon on Twitter. Apologies that you will have to suffer a lot of Oakland A's tweets. But other than that, I do mostly tweet about Smite.
Yeah, and I'm at Hi-Rez Ajax on Twitter. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Although, I do go on Reddit occasionally too. But Twitter's always the best. But yeah.
Is it the best, though?
It's the easiest way. Easiest way.
Yeah, we can make that that way.
To get in quick contact, at least, it's most likely I'll at least glance at your comment even for a second. I mean, if it's especially rude,
yeah, be nice. If you're hitting up, anybody that's on the podcast or any devs in general. I know there's some discussion, I forget who was the dev from Legends of Runeterra. There's a big thread about,
being polite,
being respectful. That's the best way to engage with us and get conversation.
Honestly, I feel like the Smite community has come a long way over the years, and we don't encounter that type of stuff that much anymore. Obviously, you're going to get some amount of it. The algorithms are stacked against it. You got new people coming in all the time, but in general, Smite players out there, much love. I think in general they really understand where we're coming from. They know we're trying to do the best we can. They know that we're open to hearing from them. So I think in general it stays positive. But yeah, I wish we could just talk more about random stuff. We got to wrap up right at the end of the hour.
All right.
Even though the esports team before us got to go 15 minutes over.
Right? They went over.
They stole 15 minutes of my podcast. Okay, for that reason, I'm going to give you a 15-minute story of how the Phyrexians came to be. Okay, so first of all.
Cool. Well, Alex, AJ, thanks so much for coming on. I had a pleasure talking with you. I feel like I always learn something new whenever I talk with you. Both super knowledgeable about the industry, about Smite in general. And it's just fun talking with you all.
It is. It is fun.
Glad to officially have my new role out there, and hopefully in the community you'll see me out more and more. I'll have to change my Twitter bio to actually say what my job is now and whatnot. So
most definitely,
it'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, for everybody out there watching right now on Twitch or listening to us out there on your preferred platform, thanks so much for tuning in to episode 2 of the Smite podcast. If you want to hear more of these, hit me up at Isaiah the Sage on Twitter. If you have more teams that you're interested in hearing from about what they do on Smite and Titan Forge, shoot me a message on Twitter. I want to keep doing these more often because I think it's really great to just introduce the community at large to all the amazing members of the Titan Forge team.
Tell your friends that the Seasons of Souls meta is perfect.
Yeah, yes, spread the word. Season of Souls meta is perfect. You heard it here first. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch you on the very next episode, but until then, see you later.